me in there.
Don't worry. Let's see. Okay. All right, we're recording. John, maybe if you could just mention your name, just full name.
My name is John Kuchinsky.
And
I was born in Patterson,
New Jersey.
And I have 2 sisters. And I was the only one that was born in a hospital.
Everybody else was born in the house?
Yes, in those days. And after I was born, the hospital burned down with all the records. So I always had a problem proving my age.
Now, when did you move to Whippany? Were you
Whippany? I was 3 years old when I moved to Whippany.
from Patterson? You lived in
From Patterson, yes. And the reason why we moved to Whippany was it was really country there. And my sister, my younger sister, had a heart problem. And the doctor said that if you don't move to the country, she will probably die. So that's the reason why I ended up in Whippany. And it was very rural. They had no roads to speak of. No electricity, no gas, of course. You had to have kerosene lamps, and if you turned it over and started a fire, you would be out of luck because there was no fire departments.
And no insurance, or did you even have insurance?
Yeah. No insurance.
Yeah.
And the same, we had no water either.
Yeah, no well.
So I remember we had to dig a well so we would have water.
And how deep did you have to dig it?
About 20 feet, I think.
Wow. Was the water any good?
Yes, it was very good. And usually, since we were from the city, we didn't know nothing about country life. But the people were always happy to see neighbors. The houses were very far apart. Half a mile or something like that. And the people in the neighborhood, they came to dig the well because we didn't know how. And to dig the well, there was one man who came with a stick, a V stick with a stem, and he would walk around and he would know where the water is because the stick would. So that's where we put the well.
Yep. That has a name. I forget. I think it's divining rod or divining something. I'm not sure.
I forgot the name. But what we had to get pipes. I guess they were 10 foot in diameter, and you would lay one down, then you pile up another. They were only about 3 foot high.
But 10 feet in diameter?
Yes, and they had like a little lip so that it would fit over the one below. And you had to put on the bottom at least 12 inches of crushed stone, so it would be stable, and you pile it up. But I remember we had like a pulley on the outside we made to hook up the pipes to set them down. And how we know we hit the well is when the water started coming up and the man had to get out.
Oh.
So then we poured in these crushed stones. They were very small. And that's how we built our well. Then we filled in with earth all around and put a pump.
It was a hand pump?
A hand pump. We had no power.
Yeah.
And that's where we got our water. Till, I guess we were living there maybe a couple of years. And then they made a road, but not gravel, they just flattened it with a bulldozer, and that was the road.
And this road was to where?
Huh?
Where was the road to?
To the different areas in the neighborhood.
Oh.
And I guess Route 10 was built when I was about close to 10. And when we saw that what they were building with concrete, wow, we thought it was great. All our bicycles then could come out because otherwise it was just a dirt road. It was not really handy to ride.
Right. Did you ever go to the landmark
No.
cafe thing?
Too far away.
Too far, yeah, that was way.
Oh, it was a half-a-day trip by horse.
No, that was too far away.
They had
That's Livingston, the landmark.
the
Yeah.
first Route 10 was, as I was telling you, they were building it. It was only 3 lanes. They figured the center lane would be for passing. But what they didn't realize, that's passing from both ways.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of accidents head on.
And so they built the road in 1935?
Yeah. 3 lanes.
Because you were born in 25, right?
Yes.
And
So I don't know how many years when they had to put the other, after so many accidents, they had to put another lane.
and now growing up, you went to a school. How far was the school?
Right there, a 2-room schoolhouse. From 1st grade to 4th. And then from 5th and 6th was the other side, the other room. And of course, in those days, you only had women as teachers. There was no men. And most of them were not married, I guess it just didn't happen. So,
Was it pretty cold in the wintertime? Did they?
oh, it was
I mean,
terrible.
I mean, did they have like stoves, or what did they? How did you heat it?
Yes, the stove they had to make. I mean, we had, and they had to bring the wood and start the fire.
So it was wood, not coal.
No. And of course, this was brought in by trucks, the wood. And we didn't have a bathroom indoors either. We had to go out, and it was pretty cold.
Now, were there girls in the class too?
Oh,
right.
sure.
Yeah. So did you have one bathroom in the outhouse, or two, or?
No, they had a big house with maybe 3, 4 holes, 2 on each side. One for boys, one for girls.
And did they have running water to?
No water.
No water. Just the Sears catalog?
Well, we had toilet paper
Oh, okay.
because we were in school.
Oh, okay.
But home, most people had Sears catalog. Or, if you were lucky, we had no stores there. That was another problem. The peddlers would come maybe once or twice a week, but in winter, you better have enough, because there were no snow plows, nothing.
So how did you get her? I mean, once you got a bad snowstorm, you were stuck in home for a long time.
Well, it could be, depending on the storm. And when they would come, before we had decent roads, the old roads, they would have men come down and by hand shovel a pathway. And the same there was one man that used to come twice a week, a butcher. He had a butcher block on the back, and whatever meat you want, he chopped it up, and he had a hand grinder to grind to get a hamburger. It was primitive.
And what did your father do for a living?
My father worked in a rubber factory. They were bringing pieces of rubber and they were grinding that up, and then they would send it out. We had, of course, a railroad track, but freight trains, no passenger trains, because there was in town 2 factories that were making paper for newspapers. They would cut them up and all, and they would have to grind them. That came in later, not when I came there, because there was no power. So that was the industrial section of Whippany at that time. Prior to when we came to the country, there was Indians there, because we had rivers, and they only lived near rivers, the Indians.
Well, didn't Whippany mean another word?
Whippany came from Whippacon tribe, something like that. So then they cut it down to Whippany.
Didn't you tell me that you had a Native American Indian come to your
Oh, yes.
school and talk? And
Yes.
what was that like?
But that was when I was in 5th grade. And then when they built a school way up in the hill there and near a river, we would get different things, different people that would come and give the kids what's going on, what things are being done on the outside. And I remember in my last year, they had 2 instructors. They were German instructors, and they were showing what they were doing. For instance, how to make butter when you don't have cows around. You can make it from cold, because cold has fat. I never realized that.
Coal what?
You can get oil like from the coal. I guess they compress it or somehow.
We're talking about a stone.
Huh?
Is the coal like
Coal that you burned.
wow. Okay.
And they color it to look like butter. Because I guess when the war came, they could use it. And then they showed us where you use that, I forgot the name already, cold. I don't mean cold, but it's dangerous, because if you put anything in it, you dip it, you take it out, it becomes brittle. You can take it.
I'm not freezing.
Okay, John, you can talk. I'll give you Jack now.
No, I'm all right.
Another 5 minutes.
What do they call that?
You talking about oleo?
It's not oil. It's
but margarine.
freezing.
Margarine, you mean, or?
No, this is. If you don't have ice, you can use.
Oh,
that.
dry ice. You're not
Yeah.
talking about dry ice, are you?
Yeah. But it's
Sounds awful.
a different name. I don't recall now. But you have to be very careful.
Couldn't hear him.
I know if you throw a hard ball and when they take it out with tongs, they can't touch it. And you take that ball and throw it on the ground.
That's liquid nitrogen.
Liquid nitrogen, you're right. It goes in pieces.
Yeah.
Taking all that down?
And that's my early years there.
Now tell me about, you had mentioned about your father coming from Russia.
My father,
He doesn't know much about it.
But I remember you telling
as a
me.
young boy, from what he told me, he had 2 brothers and a sister. And when the war came, I guess, the Russians, they went around and
And what war was this?
World War II.
Oh, World War II.
They,
No, this had to be World War One.
huh?
This had to be
World War One was 1914 to 1918. That was before he was born.
I know, but we were talking about his father.
He doesn't really know the story about his father.
Well,
Not much.
just
anyway.
what he told me, you know. He never liked to talk about it.
But it had to be World War One because you were in World War Two.
Yeah.
Right. So his father.
I don't know anything about his father.
Well,
I met him. I knew him, but I don't know.
when the Russians came to all the villages, they took all the young men.
Right.
And they left him there and took his two brothers because he had a mother.
And he was the youngest.
Yeah. He was the youngest. And the sister was there. But then later on, they would take, whether you were the last one in the family or not, they needed them, they took him into the army. So his mother knew that they would be taking him. So she told him to go away, run away.
And he did.
And that would be very difficult if you had a child and you told them to go.
Yeah.
Because you don't know.
That's how he
And-
survived. Really, John. That's how he
You want to
survived.
talk, Esther, please?
No.
And my father ran, but they caught him.
1 second.
And he was sent to Siberia. And in those days, Siberia, they had a lot of criminals they would send up there. And you didn't go in a building, you were just brought into an area and you were on your own.
So it was just trees,
Yeah.
woods. There was no buildings.
Oh, there was woods and everything. And there was only one way of getting in there, and that was by railroad. That they had.
And what about food? How did they get food?
I'm going in, Dave.
Okay, take care, Esther.
Bye, John.
How do you get food? Whatever you can steal.
Steal from who?
They didn't have no cells or nothing. You had to make your own shelter.
But they gave food to the prisoners?
Oh,
So you just had to find you.
oh. And then if you were young and they had older guys, they were criminals, they would go around, get whatever you had, take. So my father got friendly with another young man, and they decided to try to run away. It was very difficult because there was only one way out. That was walking on the tracks. They would walk during the night and sleep during the day in the woods because they would patrol that railroad tracks. And they made it.
Well, how many miles did he have to hike?
Oh, I don't know, very,
Like 1,000?
it could have been.
And what country did he end up in?
Huh?
He went to another country in Europe?
My father never told me what, but he ended up in Germany. And he worked there, and he didn't know the language. That was difficult. And of course, the Germans, would take any help they could get. And my father worked for, I guess, 6 months before he made enough money to get on a ship going to the United States. He didn't know where he was going to end up in it. But the ships were old, and you're lucky if you ever reached where you wanted to go. And a lot of old people were running away to go to America. There were a lot of Jewish people there. They put them in a hole. And how they used to feed them, they used to have a bucket that they would lower down with, I don't know what the hell they had in there. And that's how they survived. But the ship, as I mentioned, was an old freighter, and it broke apart. And all the people, especially the old people, they couldn't swim. But my father was about, I guess, 19 at that time, and he was a good swimmer. And there happened to be another ship in the area, so they came to pick up people that were swimming. And of course, the ones that don't, they went down with the ship. And that's how he got to America. And he was lucky that the ship was going to New York. That's how he ended up here, in this country. And he didn't know the English language too, which was difficult. I don't know what my father's real name was, but in those days, you had to go through the
I mean, like Ellis Island, or?
yeah, to the island there, I guess. And if you didn't know the language, they would give you a name. So my father's name was Paul. I don't know what it was, really.
Did he get to keep his last name?
Huh?
He got to keep his last name?
Yeah. But it was tough. And he worked in New York. I don't know what he did. And the interesting part was where my father lived. In Russia, he never saw a Negro. There just wasn't any. So when he got here and he saw black people, he didn't know what happened. How did they black? And what the black people did, they took advantage of the fact that they never saw a black person. So they said, you got to be nice to them because they're, I forgot what the hell they call them. You got to bless yourself when you see one. And all the women would be blessing themselves. Till finally they found out. It's just black people.
Now, where did your father meet your mother?
Somewheres.
And where is she from?
She was from in the countries, and one country would be this way, and then before long, there's something else. So she ended up in the Ukraine, but that's not where she was born. And again, she never saw a black person. It was different. And my mother worked as a maid, and also she cooked. There were people that wanted cooks, you know, so she could cook. And my father ended up here working in Patterson. He got to New York and then he went to somehow Patterson, and he worked in silk mills. They had dyeing silk, so his hands were discolored from the dyes that they used.
I mean, just temporarily, or?
No. When he died, his hands were discolored.
Like a blue, or?
Huh?
What color were they? Or just?
Like black. Like and I don't know, my mother had a brother, and in those days, if you wanted to come to the United States, you had to have somebody that would vouch for you. And my mother knew her brother was here, and that's how she got to come from where she was to New York, and from New York she worked there for a while, and her brother lived out in Whippany, and he had one cow. That's a millionaire.
Is that right?
And he also worked in the rubber factory. That's how he got my father a job there.
And how did he end up in Whippany?
Huh?
How did your uncle end up in Whippany?
I don't know how he got there, to tell you the truth. But I was named after him.
Oh, is that?
John.
Oh, okay. And you, how many siblings did you have?
Huh?
How many brothers and sisters?
He had...
Well, I mean, yourself. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I had 2 sisters.
2 sisters.
And my uncle, which I was named after, he had a son and a daughter, 2. And I'll never forget when they had my uncle. He never knew how to drive a car, and when he would drink too much, he would want to get in the car and drive it.
Well, whose car did he try to get into?
His wife was the smart one. She knew how to drive that car.
So they had a car.
Yeah, well, yeah.
What year was that?
Oh,
About?
God. When the fenders were solid steel and you could hit a tree or anything and bounce off. Never dented.
Like the 20s or?
Oh, yeah.
I thought they didn't have, because you were born 1925. And
no, it was later than that.
So it was like 30s?
I would say so.
Yeah, okay.
Because the fenders were solid steel. And the bumpers too. It was like a bar, solid bar. So you hit something, you never damaged the car. You might have damaged whatever you hit. But my uncle liked his whiskey. Oh.
She wanted to talk to John.
Talk to John. Say hello to John. Say hi to John. Give it to John.
Oh, thank you. You're a doll. I'll leave it here. Oh, there it goes. Okay, thank you. Now what's he coming with?
Okay, come on, let them finish.
So, any other thoughts about Whippany that you can think of?
The what?
Whippany. Any other things come to mind about growing up in Whippany?
It was a hard life living in those days in Whippany. They had no police force, nothing. The only police we had, we would see maybe once a month, the state troopers. They were the Royal Mounties. And when they built Route 10, naturally they had some cars in those days. So the state troopers came to the schools and told us they made a brass plate that you put on your arm to help the other kids to cross the road when it was safe. So when they did that, the kids became big shots. And they were stopping the cars. And then the police had to come. State troopers had to come and give us an education on how to act. You don't get out and stop cars. You only allow the kids to cross whenever there was no cars coming, because they didn't have that many. And the people were complaining. And of course they stopped. And the state troopers used to come more frequently to visit the school. And some even came with dogs. Tame, of course. Nice big ones. I guess some were all white, and some were, some other breed. And they would do tricks for us, lay down, roll over, and of course we kids were very happy to see that. And that's one way of them getting together, seeing us, how we're doing, and no complaints.
What did you do in the summer times? I mean, assume you were off in the summer?
Oh, yeah. Well, you had vacations like you have now. But during the springtime, we played baseball out, or football.
But during summer break, did you help your folks in any way, or like work,
No.
or
You just worked in the farms if there was any farms around to make a few dollars.
just odd jobs?
Yeah, like picking string beans or tomatoes. Then we would, since Whippany had a lot of rivers, we used to go fishing a lot. The Passaic River goes through Whippany, and it was pretty wide, the rivers.
What kind of fish did you catch? Like trout?
No, not trout. We had
Like carp?
some carp, a lot of carps, and then catfish. They had a lot of catfish. And I learned how to handle that because I didn't know they had these stickers on the side and it would cut up your hand. But I never ate any of the fish anyway.
Who did?
No.
Did you just throw it back, or?
No, it's, well, you know, the rivers weren't the cleanest. But what we also had was copperhead snakes. And of course they were poisonous. And we always had to watch for that. When we're in one section of the river we would swim in, but we were always looking. And they had snapping turtles, and they were huge. They were big. I remember some Greeks used to come down to get them, and they would kill them, and they made delicious soup from them.
You had the soup?
Oh, I didn't.
No. Well, you said delicious, so I thought maybe you tried it.
No. They were in the restaurant business.
Oh.
That's what they used to get. And they were huge. A neck, wow, big, and teeth. So you had to be careful. But that's what we used to do. And play baseball, whatever.
Yeah. How old were you when you got the radio?
I must have been early teens, I think.
Oh, really?
And in those days, you got a radio, you had to string up aerial, because it wasn't a radio that you just could turn on and got it. And I used to listen to the Lone Ranger. And they used to have these scary programs
Oh, really?
where the door would open up, you would hear a squeaking noise. And it was horrible because the first radio, I went to my uncle's house. He had a radio. But as I said, I lived almost a good half a mile from where he was. And my sisters were older than me. And we used to go down there to listen one night a week to the scary. We would be sitting in the house in the living room listening to the radio, all the lights we would put out because they had electricity then. And well, the program ended up around, I guess, 9 o'clock. It was dark outside, so my uncle had to take us home, walk us home, because we were scared as hell from listening to that program. And he was tired of doing that. So then my uncle tried to get away with it. He said, "You go down the road and I'll be talking to you and you can listen." Because there was no lights on the road, you know. So we would go down and we would holler "Uncle," and he would answer back. And then finally, he figured we were on our way almost home. He went back home. So we hollered "Uncle," and no reply. So we ran back to get him. It was something.
That's funny. Did you have a lantern or anything to walk?
Oh,
No, just dark.
no,
Just pitch black.
not even a flashlight.
I assume that.
And I mean, it was dark.
I bet. That's funny. Do you want to go inside? You getting tired?
No, I'm going to read a little.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember I used to like to sit out in the grass and look up on the sky. And this one time, I never saw an airplane except flying up in the air. And that was before World War I. And this one day, there must have been maybe 100 of them flying over. I don't know why they were practicing or
This was
something.
after World War I, right?
Before World War One.
Yeah, but you were born in 1925.
Yeah.
World War I was before 1925. So you're talking about World War II.
No.
So you saw planes before World War I?
Yeah.
Okay.
And in those days, you know, people didn't have much money. And there used to be fellas that wanted to be pilots. And they used to go in the neighborhood to ask for $1 or so, because they're what they wanted to do. They wanted to fly. And we would give them 50 cents or something like that. But they would have some kind of a trinket that they would give they saw kids, they right away give them trinkets, and naturally they got 50 cents or $1 if they were lucky. I remember listening to the one program that Orson Welles over the radio was giving Orson Welles was telling, and the people believed it, that we were being invaded from outer space. And they were landing in Morristown. Well, all the old men there, they got their guns and they were getting ready to be invaded. I'll never forget that.
What time of the year was that? Was that summer?
Oh, I don't know. That's when radio was really going. Oh, he got in trouble for that. Especially saying Morristown. And he pulled the same thing in South America. They nearly killed him.
Didn't you say somebody nearby?
The what?
Somebody nearby was so afraid that they hung themselves?
Yes. Across the street from my uncle's. They had a farm there later. And he had a farm. And I don't know.
Do you remember his name?
No. No, he's not there anymore. I'm sure. And I'm sure he had a lot of land there. I'm sure now they got all homes there. And the kids must be gone. But in those days, believe it or not, they had gypsies that came down.
From where?
Gypsies. I don't know from where. But they used to travel in groups. And I remember them because they had a field across the street from where I lived. And they would pitch their tent, and that was it. They had music, dancing, and all that stuff. And gypsies were known for stealing things. Because I remember my father also told me to stay in the house. And I guess they were there for about a month. And then they packed up and left. But nobody said anything. I mean, those days you can get out and like an old west. And I remember one night with my friend Billy, we snuck up over there to see what was going on, and they were dancing, and they had a fire where they were making their food. and they were dressed up in fancy clothes, and they always looked like they were dirty, like grease. I don't know, maybe that's the way they were. Well, Hitler was the one that was killing all the Jews and all the gypsies. Those are the two people he was killing. Didn't want to have any of them living. Yeah.